If you really stop and look at Genesis 27, it doesn't read like a holy text at first. It reads like a primetime soap opera.
Oh, absolutely. Or maybe even a heist movie.
A heist movie. That's perfect. I mean, you have a wealthy, blind father who's kind of losing his grip.
Right. You've got the scheming mother who's playing favorite.
And then the two rival brothers.
Yeah.
One's this rugged, hairy outdoorsman. The other is like a smooth-talking homebody. And the whole thing hinges on a disguise made of goat skins to pull off an identity theft.
It is incredibly dramatic. So much tension. But it's also one of the most, well, confusing stories in the Bible.
That is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We want to peel back the layers because I think for most of us, the Sunday school version was just Jacob tricked his dad, stole the blessing, and ran away.
Which leaves a massive plot hole.
A huge one. It's bothered me for years. It's the no takebacks rule. Think about it. Isaac is the patriarch, right?
Yeah.
He's the boss.
He is.
He gets tricked into blessing the wrong son. But as soon as the disguise is off and he realizes what happened, why doesn't he just say, wait a minute, I was tricked. That doesn't count. Esau, come here. Let's do this over.
That is the central mystery. And to answer that, we can't just read the story. We have to put on our detective hats and look at the legal world they lived in.
And we've got some amazing sources to do that. We're not just guessing here. We're looking at archaeological finds, the Nuzu tablets from the 15th century BC.
We're also going to get into some literary analysis of Isaac's character. Was he a fool or was something else going on?
Exactly. The mission today is to really understand the mechanics of this blessing, to see it not as like a fairy tale, but as this complex legal and theological event.
So where do we start?
Let's start with that legal landscape.
Yeah.
Because to us, a blessing just sounds like something you write in a greeting card. Best wishes,
Right.
Hope you have a great life. Sentimental fluff. But in the ancient Near East, it was. It was far from that.
And this is where those Nuzu tablets come in. This is where they are absolutely critical. So these are clay tablets found in northeast Iraq from around the 15th century BC. The people there were Hurrians.
Okay, hold on. We're using pagan legal texts from Iraq to explain a story from the Hebrew Bible.
It sounds a little counterintuitive, I know. But the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they lived in that same cultural soup. Their customs for things like marriage, adoption, inheritance, they mirror what we find in these tablets almost perfectly.
So these tablets are like the case law of their time.
Exactly. They're the legal precedents. And they tell us all about the concept of the oral will.
The oral will.
Yeah. You have to remember, this wasn't a world with easy access to paper and scribes, not for nomads anyway. They didn't have notarized documents. So how do you pass on your estate?
You need witnesses, I assume.
You need a ritual. And in that culture, the spoken word of a dying father in that ritual context was legally binding. It was an irrevocable last will and testament.
That's just wild to me. If I just said, I leave my house to Bob and didn't sign anything in our world, that's meaningless.
Thrown right out of court. But for them, breath was the ink. Let me give you an example from the tablets. It's cataloged as PS 56.
Okay, lay it on us.
It's a lawsuit. A man named Tarmiya is in court, and his brothers are suing him over who gets to marry a woman named Zululishtar.
And how does he prove his case?
He doesn't have a document. He wins the whole lawsuit because he testifies, and I'm quoting the idea here, "My father seized my hand and spoke thus." And then he repeated his father's oral blessing, giving him the woman. And that held up in court. The spoken word was enough.
Wow. So when Isaac is in his tent asking for that meal, he's not just having a nice father-son chat. He's convening a court session.
He is executing a legal transaction. As soon as those words leave his mouth, reality is legally altered. He's transferring authority.
Speaking of transferring things, we should probably clear something up. A lot of people mix up the birthright and the blessing.
They do, and it's an easy mistake to make. They're related but distinct. The birthright primogeniture, that's the legal right to a double portion of the inheritance.
So the tangible stuff, the cows, the tents, the silver.
Exactly. And the blessing, that's the spiritual passing of the torch. It invokes divine power for success, fertility, all of that. Usually they go together to the firstborn.
But not in this family. This family's so dysfunctional, they split them up.
Right. Which brings us to the bowl of stew. Because Esau had already given up the birthright years before this whole goat skin incident.
Yeah, he sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of lentil stew. Every time I read that, it sounds so fake. Who trades your entire inheritance for soup?
It sounds totally ridiculous, but again, the Nuzi tablets show us this kind of thing actually happened.
You've got a tablet for this one, too.
We do. Tablet N204. It records a deal between two brothers, Tepkatila and Kirpaza. Topkatila transfers his inheritance rights to a grove of trees.
Okay, a grove is valuable real estate. What did he get for it?
3 sheep.
Wait, what? 3 sheep? For an inheritance.
Yay.
That has to be the worst trade deal in history.
It's awful. But it proves that Esau selling his birthright wasn't just some fairy tale invention. People really did trade long-term wealth for short-term gratification.
So Esau has already sold his future for a hot meal. The problem is, Isaac doesn't seem to know or care, because when we get to the day of the blessing, he's just plowing ahead.
And this is where we get to the heist itself. The setup is Isaac is old, his eyes are dim, he can't see. But many commentators argue he was spiritually blind, too.
Because he's trying to bless Esau, even though God had already told Rebekah, the older shall serve the younger.
Exactly. He probably knows this prophecy. But the text is explicit. It says he loved Esau because he had a taste for wild game.
He's thinking with his stomach.
He is. His fleshly desire for venison is driving a spiritual decision. He's trying to subvert the divine plan so he can have a nice dinner.
And Rebekah is having none of it.
She is the mastermind here. The Hebrew word for her hearing the plan, shemikorat, it implies she was deliberately listening, eavesdropping.
So she hears the plan, and she springs into action. And she's not suggesting things to Jacob. She's like a general giving orders.
The Hebrew is emphatic. It's a command. She tells Jacob to get 2 goats and says she will cook them the way Isaac likes. She knows how to manipulate him just as well as Esau.
But the plan is insane. Jacob is a smooth man. Esau is a hairy man. So she's going to cover his hands and neck in goat skins.
It sounds absurd, doesn't it?
It's beyond absurd. If I put goat skins on my hands, went to my dad, he wouldn't bless me. He'd ask me why I was wearing a dead goat.
It shows you how far gone Isaac might be. But look at Jacob's reaction. This is so telling. He doesn't say, Mom, this is morally wrong. We shouldn't lie.
No, he's totally pragmatic. He just says, what if I get caught?
Exactly. I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself. His only objection is the risk of failure, not the morality of the act.
And Rebekah just says, let the curse be on me.
Incredible maternal determination. So Jacob goes in, smelling of stew, wearing his brother's clothes, with fur taped to his neck. Which brings us to this encounter and this big debate about Isaac. Is he a senile old fool, or does he know more than he lets on?
The traditional view is that he's just a schlemiel, right? A comedic fool.
Yeah, that's the Yiddish term. He's passive, ruled by his appetite, easily duped.
I mean, it's a fair reading. He mistakes his son for a goat.
It is, but if you look closer at the dialogue, there's another interpretation, the tragic hero view, which argues that Isaac was suspicious the whole time.
What's the evidence for that?
The interrogation. He doesn't just accept it, he grills Jacob. 5 times. Who is it? How did you find it so quickly? Come near so I can touch you. Then he asks again, are you really my son Esau? And finally, come and kiss me.
That's not a senile man. That's someone poking holes in a story.
Exactly. And he spots the sensory conflict right away. He says that famous line, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau.
But that's the million-dollar question. If you recognize your son's voice, why would you care what his hands feel like?
Why does he override his own ears? Well, some theories point to what happens next. He asks for a kiss, and he smells Jacob's clothes, which were Esau's clothes. And he says, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed.
Is there a theological point to the smell?
There might be. The idea is that in that moment, smelling the field which the Lord has blessed, he realizes that God is orchestrating this. The voice is wrong, but the destiny, the smell of the situation is right. He realizes he can't fight it. Yahweh is sending Jacob.
So he just submits to it.
He submits. He blesses him not because he's fully tricked, but because he finally surrenders his own will to God's. It changes him from a fool into a tragic hero.
So the blessing is given. Jacob leaves. And the timing here is just, it's pure cinema.
It is razor thin. The text says Jacob had scarcely left when Esau came in. We're talking seconds. If Esau had been 2 minutes earlier, the whole story changes.
And a lot of people point to that as, evidence of God's sovereignty. God is managing the clock.
Absolutely. And then comes the discovery. Esau realizes what's happened, and he lets out this great and bitter cry. It's just gut-wrenching.
And he makes that wordplay in Jacob's name. It's easy to miss in English.
It is. The name Jacob, Yaqub, sounds like the verb akob, which means to supplant or to grab by the heel. So Esau shouts, is he not rightly named Jacob, for he has supplanted me these 2 times?
First the birthright, now the blessing.
Right, and some scholars see a literary structure here called a chiasmus.
Okay, break that down for us simply.
Think of it like a mirror. In the first part, Esau trades the birthright for red stew, eating. In the second, Jacob trades goat meat eating for the blessing. Esau suddenly connects the two events. He sold the birthright, and that act is what opened the door for the blessing to be stolen.
So let's go back to our big question, Isaac's reaction. When Esau is standing there, the text says Isaac trembled violently. Why not anger? I'd be furious. I'd be yelling, go get him.
But he doesn't. He trembles. And the idea is that this is the trembling of a man who realizes he almost fought against God and lost. He tried to subvert the oracle, and God outmaneuvered him at every turn.
So he's trembling at the sovereignty of God.
Yes. He realizes he's up against a God who cannot be thwarted. And that is why he tells Esau, I have blessed him, and indeed he shall be blessed. He confirms it. He knows it's irrevocable. The legal words were spoken, the ritual done. God's will was established.
That's just crushing for Esau, though. He begs, have you only one blessing, my father?
It's one of the saddest lines in Genesis, and Isaac gives him what's called an anti-blessing.
An anti-blessing. What does he say?
He says to Esau, Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother.
Away from the fatness. Oof, that's brutal.
It's the exact opposite of Jacob's blessing. He basically exiles him to a life of violence and servitude.
And Esau becomes the father of the Edomites, who were historical enemies of Israel.
The prophecy comes true.
So let's look at the fallout. Jacob got the blessing. Rebekah got her favorite son as the heir. But did they really get away with it?
That's the great irony, isn't it? They won, but they also lost. It's a classic case of sowing and reaping.
So what happens to Jacob?
He gets the blessing, sure, but he has to run for his life immediately. Esau wants to kill him. He spends the next 20 years in exile.
With his uncle Laban, who is quite a character.
Laban is a master deceiver himself, and think about the symmetry here. Jacob deceived his blind father in the dark, using a disguise, to swap places with his brother.
Okay.
Years later, on Jacob's wedding night, his father-in-law Laban deceives Jacob in the dark, using a veil, to swap the older sister, Leah, for the younger sister, Rachel.
Whoa! Put that together. The deceiver gets deceived by a father figure in the dark involving siblings. That's perfect poetic justice.
It's an exact mirror. He spends decades learning exactly what it feels like to be his father.
And Rebekah, the mastermind of the whole heist.
She pays a terrible price. She tells Jacob to run away for a few days until Esau cools off. Those few days turn into 20 years.
She never sees him again.
She never sees her favorite son again. She dies before he comes back. She preserved the spiritual line, but she lost her son.
And Isaac's family is just fractured.
Completely. But, and this is the key theological point, the Abrahamic covenant is preserved through the proper line.
This brings us to that big idea of divine sovereignty. Because looking at this cast of characters, nobody comes out looking good.
Nobody. You have a lying son, a scheming mother, a passive, appetite-driven father, and a profane brother. Everyone is flawed. Everyone is acting out of fear or greed.
And yet, God's plan that the older would serve the younger, it still happens.
God uses their mess to accomplish his will. It doesn't excuse their sin. They all suffer for it. But their sin doesn't derail God's plan.
It's interesting. The sources note that Jacob steals the blessing here, but he doesn't really get it until later.
Right. This is just the beginning for him. Later, when he's on the run at Bethel, he has that dream of the ladder to heaven. And that's where God validates the blessing directly. Not because of a trick, but because of the promise. Jacob has to learn he didn't need to steal what God was already going to give him.
That's a powerful thought. Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob. They all tried to manipulate things to fit their own desires.
They all tried to help God out.
So as we wrap this up, we started thinking this was a heist movie. But the real twist isn't that they got away with it.
No. The twist is that God used the heist to build a nation.
Which leaves us with a pretty challenging question for our own lives, doesn't it? How often we try to help God out through our own schemes? We panic. We manipulate.
We force a door open, not realizing that God's plan was going to succeed anyway without our interference.
We try to put goat skins on our hands because we don't trust the promise.
And just like Jacob, we usually just end up making our own lives a lot more complicated.
Oh, that is definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.